Listen. You smell something?
Welcome to T-Bone's Best of Roanoke show. Music, comedy, and conversation featuring HB, the Honey Badger.
Honey Badger don't care.
Now, on with the show.
You ready, HB?
Yes, sir.
You ready, T-Square?
I am ready, T-Bone.
Oh, that's good. This is Radio Free Roanoke, and this is episode number 89, T-Bone's Best of Roanoke show. HB, it was almost 86 years ago, 86, the Salem VA Medical Center was dedicated by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Were you there?
I was not. I didn't make that one. I think I was busy that day.
You were probably shopping at the mall
Yeah.
or something. But anyway, to tell us all about that very historic day, there's a lot of story behind the story of how the VA Medical Center got started. And here to tell us about it is a former VA Medical Center employee, and I would call keeper of the VA history flame, Tracy Turner. Tracy, welcome.
Thank you, T-Bone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's get started. You know, we're downtown at the historic City Farmers Market, but there's a lot of history behind the Salem VA Medical Center that people might not realize. How in the world did Salem or Roanoke get selected for that? What happened on that day when FDR came down? What's the story behind the story? So can you take us back to the beginning and just let's go from there?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to 1933.
Now, who was president then? Hoover?
Herbert Hoover.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right.
And in 1933, President Herbert Hoover, after the Federal Board of Hospitalization recommended a general type facility be located somewhere in Southwest Virginia.
Now, this is like for veterans.
Yes.
Okay.
Veterans Hospital.
For veterans. And you have to remember at that time, this was 1933, World War II had not happened. There was no such thing as World War I or World War II. It was just the Great War.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. And in 33, let's remember too, the Great Depression started in 1929.
And the Depression has, I will get into that. The Depression era leads into President Roosevelt's speech and at the VA dedication ceremony, talking about veterans and the bonus issue that was a big issue at the time.
Gotcha.
And how he needed to place first things first. Well, I'll get into that.
A lot of
shortly.
issues there. Okay. All right. So Herbert Hoover.
Yeah. Herbert Hoover gave careful consideration with reference to population and accessibility. They were the two important issues. You had to be near, you didn't want people driving a long ways on these dirt roads in the old days, and it had to be utilities and transportation hubs around, and the Roanoke area had that.
And we were at that time, 1933, there weren't too many VA medical centers. It was just kind of getting started as a concept, if I remember right.
Yes. The VA was just started in 1930.
Right. So this was right at the beginning.
That's what I
almost.
thought.
And it was actually started, the VA was one of the instrumental people in the beginning creating the VA, the original VA in 1930. The initial agency was General Frank T. Hines from World War I. He was in attendance as well at the ceremony in Salem.
Oh, okay, very good. Okay. So Hoover's thinking, hey, we need something in southwestern Virginia, but that doesn't mean that we were the only place considered, right?
No, sir. A lot of different places were considered at the time, but what happened was the actual selection of Roanoke, which is, of course, now annexed into Salem, it was credited mostly to the efforts of the local Chamber of Commerce, which had been lobbying for a facility to be established in the Roanoke area. Now, these were headed up by Roanoke City Council member Frank Cooper with help and support of Representative Clifton A. Woodrum, which I believe the Roanoke Airport is named after.
I believe you're right.
He was a congressman, 6th District of Virginia.
Cliff Woodrum, yeah?
Yes. And according to the Roanoke Times of that era, their bid was laid impressively before the national administration. Which is to say, they did a pretty thorough job of convincing them this is where it needed to be located.
They made a good pitch, a good presentation.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. It's good for them. And you know what, T Square, it takes that kind of big thinking, that vision to say, hey, you know what, this valley would benefit from having a federal facility here. It'd be good for employment. It'd be good for taking care of veterans. It would be a hub for care.
So Roanoke area, Salem, having the railroad here too, maybe that played into it. But anyway, go ahead.
Railroad did play into it,
Yeah.
along with utility providers and all the transportation hubs. It was there were a lot of what was then called major roads.
Right.
Route 11, I mean, it didn't have interstates
Right.
and all that, but Route 11 was the big superhighway through here.
Right.
At that time.
Okay.
You know,
Lynchburg Turnpike.
and
I think
Lynchburg Turnpike,
was a
yeah.
biggie,
And Lynchburg Turnpike was there.
Yes.
And Route 460 was
Yeah.
there.
Okay, so they approved it, they
Yeah.
pitched it, and they sold it.
Yes, they pitched it, and they visited all the engineers from the VA visited all the proposed sites, but chose Roanoke due to its mainline railroads,
Okay.
bus lines, paved highways, and the availability of water, gas, electric, and sewer services. All those factored into the selection of the local area.
We had it all.
Yes, we had big booming metropolis here
Yes.
in Noketown, which is now Salem. Or, that it was a pretty big job. The original construction cost was $1,750,000, and January 16th, 1934, ground was broken.
January 16th, 1934. Okay, they
Yes.
broke ground. Okay.
And you guys mentioned just a minute ago about jobs and construction opportunities,
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Honey Badger.
Yeah.
And you hit the nail square on the head with that, because the VA announced that the unemployed persons in the valley would receive job preference in the construction of the VA. It's like,
Yes. I understand that during the construction, back then you didn't work on Sunday, but this was a federal government job. And they told the guys who were driving dump trucks at the time, because they were trying to do excavating and getting the building started, they said, you go ahead and told them drivers, you keep driving, we'll pay your fines. Because they ended up working, I think, 7 days a week, which was very unusual back then. I do know that.
Wow.
Yeah,
that
it was.
happened. But anyway, not to get you off track there.
no, I'm on track. We're right on track.
Well, I don't mean to. Go ahead.
So that's how the Salem VA became located here, because of those reasons. Access to public transportation and public utilities. It was just a lot easier to run a hospital from that perspective.
Right.
And the federal government wasn't going to spend a lot of money to build something where they couldn't have all those ready access to operate it. So that's how, and it benefited the local unemployed people. It got jobs. It gave a lot of jobs to locals.
Yeah.
Which was a smart move, and like we said, that was in the middle of the Depression.
It was
Yeah.
coming out of the Depression, and he, President Roosevelt, he reminded people, that the hot topic in his speech he gave, one of the things he mentioned, the hot topic of the day, was the adjusted compensation certificates. Now, nobody knows what that is
No.
today, but it was known as a bonus to local veterans of the World War at the
Oh,
time.
okay.
There was no World War I, World War II.
Right. It was just.
It was just the World War.
So they were expecting a bonus that hadn't been paid yet.
Yes, the government
That was
had
a
not
hot
paid it,
topic.
and
Okay.
and there was a lot of veterans were up in arms about that bonus, and a lot of protests.
Like they marched on Washington.
They
Yeah.
did. They
it
marched
was a
on
big,
Washington.
yeah.
They had the little Hoovervilles.
Oh, that's right.
Because they were mad at Hoover, President Hoover. So the President, Roosevelt, he was faced with the economic problems coming out of the Depression. You're exactly right. And leading the nation's recovery from the Great Depression. The news correspondents' reactions were varying as to the most important points of the President's speech at that time. But most agreed that his remarks, including putting first things first, indicated that veterans bonus payments would have to be made only after other more pressing relief needs have been given attention, which would include veterans hospitalization and health care.
Right.
Getting a hospital bill.
So,
Yeah.
so what he gave a speech to the veterans at that time at the dedication, telling them, okay, you know, the bonus is, okay, we're going to build this big hospital, and your bonus can only come after we get these hospitals built. But you'll get them. But I know, you know, what he said, that he said the needs were more pressing relief needs that need attention, providing for the disabled, the sick, and the destitute, and the starving and underprivileged and forgotten people living in the back alleys of life. And what the president did say was that he's confident that the veterans of the American wars and their patriotism would approve, and that it had been amply demonstrated that the veterans of the World War today, in the prime of life, are better off from the point of view of employment of annual income than the average of any other great group of citizens.
Wow.
So he trusted the veterans to okay putting the bonus on the back burner, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
And veterans supported that.
But showed that it was coming, and we have you in mind. And
Yeah, but first things first. Well, let me step back for just a second then. So they broke ground January of 34. Things are moving along. They're starting the construction. FDR comes to Roanoke via train, right?
Yes.
And I want you to tell us a little bit about that day when he comes to Roanoke and how that all happened. Was there like a special escort?
How long?
Or, you know, what was going on that day?
How long had he been president at that time?
He was elected in, Hoover was president in 33. I think he just got elected.
Right.
He had just been elected, I think, in November of 33, I believe.
So he would have taken over in probably March or January of 34,
Maybe.
right?
Yeah.
And then, so the dedication was in October of 34.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell us about the day then when he comes down, his day, FDR's visit to Roanoke, his big day in Roanoke.
Okay, well, Franklin D. Roosevelt came to Roanoke October 19th, 1934. The ceremony took place about 4 months prior to the scheduled completion of the VA.
Okay.
Many local and state politicians were here also, including West Virginia representatives. Now, October 19th, 1934, here in Salem, at the VA.
Yeah.
National Guard units from Blacksburg, Covington, Lynchburg, Martinsville, and Bedford were represented, including the 116th Infantry, which later, we all know, distinguished itself on Omaha Beach in France at the D-Day landings of June 6, 1944. Boy Scouts were even utilized to help with communications and traffic control, along with students from Virginia Tech, Virginia Military Institute, and Roanoke College.
So it was kind of a big thing.
It was a big deal. The local Marine Corps Reserve provided an honor guard, and the Roanoke Times reported that the event exceeds in magnitude anything in history.
Do you have any idea, Tracy, how many people were there? Because when he gave his speech, he's standing there. Well, if you can visualize it, the flagpole at the VA Medical Center. So that's where FDR is. But how many people are out in that baseball field? Any idea?
Yeah, they estimated at about 40,000 people were there. And
Wow.
it was a big deal. Schools were closed, businesses were closed, government offices closed early at 1 p.m. that day. And school children were brought out by the roadsides to see the president come by in his motorcade.
Well, now tell us a little bit before we get into the actual speech. Tell us, like, when he comes down from D.C. on a train that day, right?
Yep.
And he arrives here in downtown Roanoke?
Down here on the market is where he got on and off the train,
And
right here at the train station.
And does he hop in the Valley Metro bus and go up to Salem?
No, he hopped. They brought his presidential limousine, which in those days were convertible
cars, yeah.
Big long Cadillacs or something. I'm not sure exactly what
So
they
you
were.
could be seen.
Yes.
Yeah.
They didn't worry. They didn't worry about the things they worry about in today's times with the shootings and stuff. They put the top down. President got in his car, big old black convertible presidential limo.
Nice.
Put the top down, and they drove around. Now, they didn't have 581. He couldn't hop on 581.
Did he go to Campbell?
I'm not sure of the exact route, but he did go. I think he went out Route 11 to Salem and went through downtown Salem and back to the VA. Because the main way to get from Roanoke to Salem in those days was Route 11.
Do you know of anybody, Tracy, that would happen to have seen him drive by and waved at him?
Yeah, my mom.
Tell us about that.
My mom was born August 1926, and so she was, about about eight, about 7, 8 years old, and her mother and her father took her out on the roadside here in Roanoke. They grew up down here in Roanoke, in southeast Roanoke on Dale Avenue. And they brought my mom down here, and my mom vividly remembered standing, and they gave her a little American flag like they did to most of the kids, had these waving the little flags. And she saw the president. She watched him go by and waved at him, and she had a lot of vivid memories of that. She used to tell me about it all the time. She was so excited, as was even the grown-ups were.
Sure, man, you don't see the president very often. And he came to Roanoke,
right? And the Salem VA. A lot of people aren't really aware of this, but the Salem VA is the only VA medical center ever to be dedicated by a sitting president. The only VA to be dedicated by a sitting president. That's pretty phenomenal, I think. I think that's distinctive of the Salem VA.
Yeah. It is, because there's probably, over 150 VA medical centers across the country?
Yes, there are.
Yeah. So anyway, your mom waved at him, and she gave him the blessing to keep going. And he headed to the Salem VA Medical Center in his motorcade. He pulls up in front of probably Building 2, I guess.
Yes, the flagpole that's still there in front of Building 2 now is where they had a big platform.
They built a podium for him,
and chairs and sitting around, and that's where all the dignitaries gathered around him and had a podium for him to speak from, and right there at the base of the flagpole, which is still there today.
Yeah.
Now, he was afflicted with polio?
Polio, yeah.
Do you know, was he wheeled up to the podium in a wheelchair? Was he able to walk up with some assistance? Or
I think
that kind of stuff was not really publicized.
They didn't show it much anyway.
Yeah, they kind of hid that from the media.
The public,
And the media were
very
helpful.
nice to him, yeah.
They were very helpful in helping to not portray him as crippled.
Right.
Because in those days, crippled had bad connotations.
Right.
It meant you were weak or couldn't do the job. We all know that's not necessarily true now, but in those days it was a different time, and he didn't want that to portray that.
Right.
So I believe, and I don't know this for a fact, but I believe I've read other articles and other speeches that he's given, and he normally received assistance to help stand up behind the podium.
Yeah.
And I don't know for sure if he gave this speech standing up or seated. I think he gave it standing up.
I think so.
But he had help getting on his feet.
Oh, sure, and I think he did that every time.
He had braces that he wore sometimes.
That's correct, yeah. And before we get into the actual speech, I want to remind people there is footage of him giving the speech. You can find it on YouTube. And it's in black and white, of course, but there he is talking about the Salem VA Medical Center. You can see it in the background. And it's a fun thing to look at.
It is, and he addresses the crowd in a really local, down to earth way, and he you could tell he really enjoyed being here. He loved the view. He commented on the sun was setting that when he gave his speech over the mountains, looking west.
Oh, nice.
He gave complimentary words about the view, the beautiful view, and the beautiful setting. And it was just, he saw a lot of potential in the community, So.
Right. And in a way, he was like saying to the community, we're going to bring veterans here, and you're going to be their friends, you're going to be their neighbors, you're going to take care of them.
Yes. What he said was, he reminded everyone that hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children scattered throughout this country have no splendid hospitals for their care, and can but suffer the ills of their lives according to their own individual circumstances. he stated that he was confident that the veterans of American War and Patriotism would approve, and that it had been amply demonstrated that veterans of the World War today, in the prime of life, are better off from the point of view of employment and annual income than any average of the other great group of citizens.
Right.
The final words of his speech were, and I quote, "Most of you in this great audience are from this neighborhood, and in the years to come, the men who will occupy this hospital will be your friends and your neighbors. I commend them to your care."
I commend them to your care. That's
did say
the
that.
clincher line right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he understood how big of a part, that tells me that he understood how big of a part it would play in our community going forward. And he was so right about that. It's still a huge part of our community.
Yeah. Well, you know, even at that time, there were Civil War veterans that were fighting for getting care and stuff, I believe.
Yes. Now, when I went to work for the Salem VA in February of '79, we had a Spanish American War veteran still in the hospital.
Yikes.
And I talked to him. I remember talking to him.
Yeah.
He didn't last too long. He was gone
Sure.
pretty quick, but I did talk to him. And
Yeah.
I knew many World War I veterans during my time, in my early days at the VA.
How many years did you put in at the Salem VA, Tracy?
Well, I retired January 2016 with 42 years of service, 38 years with the Salem VA, 4 years Navy.
Okay. So you're very qualified to write the history.
Yes, yes.
Well, I mean, and my mom worked there for 20 some years, and so
Nice.
I have, it's really. I didn't know when I got hired that it would become what it became.
Right, yeah.
It truly did become more than just a job, more than just a paycheck. It truly became a passion for me. And I still help veterans today. I'm still on the Roanoke Valley Veterans Council today. I still help veterans today, even though I don't get paid. I'm unemployed and I'm not looking for a job. But I still help veterans all I chance I can. I'm the chairman of the Roanoke 8th Air Force Fellowship, which is a local group started by local World War II aviators. Most notably, it was started by a fellow by the name of Bill Overstreet, who he passed away in December of 2013, and his passing was announced on all three major news networks, national news networks, because he's a famous guy. He flew with Chuck Yeager and Bud Anderson, famous flyers, and he became a good friend of mine, and he asked me to help him run the group, and I did, and then he asked me to take it over completely to keep it going, and I am still keeping it going out of respect to Bill.
Now he didn't fly a plane through the Eiffel Tower. Is that the guy?
He did. He reportedly flew. He was a P-51 Mustang pilot in the 357th Fighter Group, and on one day in 1944, in a combat action with a German plane, flew under the Eiffel Tower and shot the German plane down.
That was the guy.
I've
heard that story.
Yeah.
That was the guy. He was the guy that asked me to help him run the group, and I said, "Sure, Bill." I said, "Anything you
Wow.
say."
Yeah.
And I've become a part of that group, and as my job when I was enrollment supervisor at the Salem VA Medical Center, which was in charge of enrolling new veterans into the VA healthcare system, I used to get a lot of World War II guys would come in, and they would come up, and I would see them, and I always liked airplanes. Old World War II airplanes, and these guys would come in with a hat on with the airplane picture on it, and I knew, and they'd say, I need to get registered in, and I'd say, what'd you do in the war? I see you got an airplane hat on. Well, I flew this, or I flew that, or I was a gunner on this, or gunner on that, or I was an air crew on this, or air crew on that. And I said, well, have a seat, and about couple hours later, I'd have them registered in after talking to them, but because we would just get, so I started meeting these guys, and they became personal friends of mine.
Yeah.
I have helped so many guys get hearing aids with the help of I shouldn't say it, but in case other wonderful VA employees hear this, but my favorite VA
Person.
doctor, audiologist, Miss Christine Woodrum, she helped me get hearing aids for all my World War II buddies that needed them. And she was so good. When I would call her and ask her, I'd say, hey, I got a guy. And in those days, in those early days, you had to have a service-connected disability to get a hearing aid. For hearing related,
right.
to get a hearing aid. You don't have to now.
And for those who don't know what service connection means, that means something happened to you while you were on active duty, you were injured, or there was some type of trauma or impairment while you were on active duty.
Yeah, and I remember I had guys come to me, and Jeff Baker came to me one time. Russ Robinson came to me. All these guys flew in World War II planes, and none of them can hear anymore because of that.
How loud it was.
And you know, they hearing aids, and through Christine Woodrum's work, she would first determine that a hearing aid would help, and then they would get them fitted for hearing aids, and then boom, and these guys would come thank me every time I saw them. They would come shake my hand. I say, no, go shake Christine's hand. She's the one that did the work. I just sent them. I said, I just sent you to her.
Well, she's one fine person, man. That's what I'll say. She really helped out.
She did. She really supported our World War II guys so much, and I can't say enough about her.
Well, and I can't say enough about you for what you've done for veterans over the years too, Tracy, and also for keeping this history. I want to, as we get ready to wrap up here, is there anything else that you want to bring out? Any other little interesting facts about the Salem VA that you like for people to know about before we close up shop?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I could say a lot of, I could sit here and talk all day about it, but I think the most important thing is I would like people to be aware of the decades of improvement that I personally witnessed happen at the Salem VA. It was a good hospital when I first went to work there, and even before, but they have really fine-tuned things so much over the last 30-some years. I am now a patient. I get medicine from there, and they treat me so good. But the systems, the equipment, the professionalism of the staff, everything, the management, everything has really improved greatly, from the food service and the housekeeping staff all the way to the doctors and the management staff. Everything has really just gotten a ton more professional, and actually some say they're better than the private sector in some ways. So I think if I don't say anything else about the Salem VA, I would like to say how much it's improved and the good care that they do provide to all of the local veterans.
Well, thank you, T-Square. That's a great way to end it. You know, it's been 86 years, so it's really good to hear how far the Salem VA's come, and it's still going very, very strong and doing very, very well and helping our veterans. So thank you for all this history.
Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity, guys. It's an honor to talk to Honey Badger and T-Bone.
Well, thank you very much, Tracy.
All right, my friend. Talk to you later.
Yes, sir.